I pushed open my bedroom door. They were in my bed, my husband and my best friend. But the first look on her face wasn't shame, it was annoyance. Like I'd interrupted a plan, not just a cheap affair. When he looked at me, it wasn't guilt, it was relief. Like the charade was finally over. He said, "This isn't what it looks like." And he was right. It was so much worse. I thought my life was ending. It was only later, sitting in a motel with $70,000 in cash from my dead aunt, that I learned the truth. This wasn't a betrayal. It was a cleanup operation. After my husband's affair with my best friend, after I lost everything, my job, my home, my car, even my own damn sense of worth, that was his final judgment, that I was finished. 7 months ago, I had a life. I had a marriage I believed in, a job that paid the bills, and a best friend I trusted with my life. Now I was living in a roach-infested fleabag motel off I-35, a place that charged by the week and smelled like stale cigarettes and regret. I was eating $2 instant ramen and trying to figure out how to stretch the last of my freelance cash to cover next week's rent. My husband, Sean, had been sleeping with my best friend, Michelle. For how long? Hell, I don't know, maybe forever. When I caught them, my entire life fell apart so fast it felt coordinated, like a controlled demolition. I lost my job within 2 weeks. The divorce was a joke, leaving me with literally nothing. All my friends, our friends, stopped returning my calls. I went from a comfortable middle-class life in Austin, Texas, to absolute rock bottom in less than 2 months. Before we continue, before I show you the one thing they never saw coming, I have to ask you something. Do you believe in loyalty? It's a simple question. If you do, if you believe that loyalty is the one thing that should never be broken, I need you to hit that subscribe button right now. It's free. It's your way of telling the world that you stand against betrayal, that you stand with the truth. And if you don't subscribe, if you're one of those people who thinks this is just drama, go ahead. Go down to the comments right now and tell us all why you side with the cheaters. We're all waiting to hear your excuse. For the rest of us, let's see what happened next. I was sitting on the edge of that squeaky motel bed, eating my ramen with a plastic fork, when I saw it. Tucked way under the bed, covered in dust bunnies, was a suitcase. It was old, battered brown leather with brass corners. It had a luggage tag, and on it, in a familiar, precise handwriting, was my full name. Jane Marie Thompson. The handwriting belonged to my Aunt Queenie. Queenie had died 9 months earlier. She was the eccentric one, the crazy aunt everyone in the family whispered about, the one who was difficult and paranoid. I pulled the suitcase out. There was a key taped to the bottom. My hands were shaking. I opened it. Inside, stacked in neat bundles, was $70,000 in cash, a plane ticket, and a note that rewrote everything I thought I knew about my life. It was just a few lines on yellow legal paper. "Janie, this is just pocket change. The real fortune is waiting for you at this address. Don't trust Sean. Don't trust Michelle. They've been planning your destruction since before your wedding. Your mother's death 6 years ago wasn't an accident. Finish what she started before they silence you too." 7 months before I found that suitcase, my life looked so normal I never even thought to question it. My name is Jane Thompson, and before my world imploded, I had a 2-bedroom apartment in a decent neighborhood in South Austin. You know, the kind of place where you still kind of knew your neighbors. Mrs. Rodriguez down the hall always smiled. The maintenance guy, bless his heart, actually showed up when the AC broke. The apartment wasn't fancy. The walls were paper thin. I could hear our neighbors watching The Bachelor every Monday night. The carpet had a permanent stain from a previous tenant that no amount of resolve could fix. But Sean and I had painted the living room agreeable gray together. We'd spent a whole Saturday cursing at IKEA instructions, building that damn Kellogg's shelf. We hung our wedding photos on the wall, right where the afternoon sun would hit them, and make everything look warmer than it was. I worked as a marketing coordinator at Denzel Associates, a mid-sized firm downtown. We handled local businesses. Small stuff, really. Social media for Keep Austin Weird taco joints, website redesigns for dental offices, email blasts for boutique shops on South Congress that were barely making rent. It wasn't the career I'd dreamed of when I graduated from UT with fantasies of working for major brands in New York, but it paid $55,000 a year, plus benefits. It was enough to cover my half of the rent and groceries, with a little left over for grabbing brunch and mimosas when Sean and I wanted to pretend we had more disposable income than we did. My boss, George Denzel, was professional but distant. The kind of supervisor who'd compliment your work in a meeting, but never quite promote you. He'd ask about your weekend, but you could tell he was just waiting for you to stop talking so he could move on. I'd been there for years. My performance reviews always praised my reliability, but that word never translated into a real raise or a better title. But I didn't question it. It was a job. I showed up at 8:30 a.m., made coffee in the sputtering break room machine, sat at my desk with its thrilling view of the parking garage, and I did my job. It felt stable, predictable, safe. Sean worked as a business consultant. That's what he told me anyway. His schedule was always all over the place, which seemed normal for his field. Late nights finishing proposals, weekend trips to meet with venture capitalists in Palo Alto, conference calls at 10 p.m. with East Coast clients. He'd come home exhausted, kiss my forehead, microwave whatever leftovers were in the fridge, and pass out on the couch with his laptop still open on his chest. I'd cover him with a blanket and feel this weird mix of affection and loneliness. Proud he worked so hard, but resenting how little less time we had. We'd met 7 years ago. Or at least, I thought we met 7 years ago, at a dinner party thrown by mutual friends. Sean had been so charming that night. He asked about my work and actually seemed to listen. He made jokes that were smart, not mean. He even offered to help clean up after dinner. He asked for my number, and I gave it to him, trying not to look too eager. Our courtship felt easy, like we were just designed to fit. Dinners at casual spots, walking around Lady Bird Lake, lazy Sunday mornings reading in bed. He proposed after 18 months, right on the Pfluger pedestrian bridge. I said yes. I couldn't imagine a reason to say no. But things had changed over the last 2 years. Little shifts, the kinds of things you notice but tell yourself are just normal marriage stuff. Sean became more protective of his phone. He'd tilt the screen away when I walked past. He'd take calls in the other room, closing the door. He'd set his phone face down on the dinner table. He got vague about his work, using broad terms like synergy and restructuring, instead of telling me the funny stories about his clients he used to share. And he started picking fights. Stupid fights. The way I loaded the dishwasher, whether we really needed to buy organic milk at H-E-B, and how much time I spent talking to Michelle. Michelle, she'd been my best friend since college, my ride or die. We were broke students together, splitting ramen packets and dreaming about the futures we were going to build. She was my maid of honor. She stood next to me, crying during the ceremony in a way that made me cry. She helped us move into our apartment, hauling boxes up 3 flights of stairs, making jokes the whole time. Every Thursday night for 5 years was our night. She'd come over with a bottle of 2-buck chuck and we'd sit on my couch and spill all the tea. Work frustrations, her latest dating disasters on Hinge, my worries that Sean and I were drifting apart. She'd listen with so much sympathy. She'd nod in all the right places. She'd say things like, "Oh, honey, all marriages go through phases. You two just need to reconnect." She told me how lucky I was to have Sean, how most men weren't as supportive or steady, how I shouldn't take him for granted. And I believed her. I believed her because, how can you not? Questioning your best friend, the person who's been your sister for over a decade, feels like questioning reality itself. If you can't trust her, who can you trust? My mother, Eleanor, had died 6 years earlier. A car accident on a rainy night on a dark Texas highway. Her car, wrapped around an oak tree, the police said she'd been going too fast, maybe fell asleep at the wheel. A tragedy. My Aunt Queenie, my mother's older sister, insisted something was wrong, but everyone dismissed her. That was just Queenie being Queenie. Queenie was the family conspiracy theorist, the one who showed up to Thanksgiving with pamphlets about corporate corruption and warnings about big pharma. When she died 9 months ago, alone in her little house, surrounded by filing cabinets and stacks of old newspapers, I just felt guilty. Guilty for not visiting more, for not taking her seriously, for writing her off as paranoid when maybe she was just the only one paying attention. I did everything right. I went to work, I paid my bills, I kept the apartment clean, I tried to be a good wife. I thought that if I just worked hard and trusted the right people, I'd be safe. I thought loyalty meant something. I thought the life I'd built was real. Sitting in that motel room, staring at that suitcase, I finally saw how naive I'd been. My entire life hadn't just been a lie. It had been a performance, a carefully constructed stage play designed by people who saw me as a tool, not a person. The job, the marriage, the friendship, all of it built on a foundation of lies. But I didn't know that yet. Not really. Not until I remembered that Tuesday 6 months ago, the day my comfortable, normal life shattered for good. I'd woken up that morning feeling sick. Not like I ate bad barbecue sick. It was a deeper wrongness, a nausea that sat in my chest and made it hard to breathe. I tried to ignore it. I went through the motions, shower, a piece of toast I couldn't finish. I got dressed for work while Sean slept in. He'd said he had a late meeting the night before and needed to rest. By 10 a.m., I was at my desk at Denzel Associates, staring at a social media calendar for a dental office. I couldn't focus, my hands were cold, my heart was pounding, the nausea was getting worse. Finally, I walked into George Denzel's office. "George, I'm sorry, I feel awful. I think I need to go home." I expected him to give me a hard time. Denzel hated people leaving midday, but he just looked at me, a weird expression I couldn't read. And he said, "Feel better, Jane." His tone made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. He didn't sound concerned. He sounded relieved, like he already knew something I didn't. The drive home took 20 minutes. I kept the radio off. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I told myself I was being ridiculous. It was just a stomach bug. But the dread kept growing, this absolute certainty that something was wrong. When I pulled into our apartment complex, I saw her car, Michelle's beat-up silver Toyota Camry, parked in a visitor spot. She had a key. She sometimes stopped by during the day to use our Wi-Fi if hers was acting up. It shouldn't have been weird, but on a Tuesday morning, when Sean was supposedly home sick and she was supposed to be at her own job, I sat in my car for a full minute, engine running. I tried to talk myself out of it. They're planning a surprise for me. Sean felt sick and she stopped by to bring him soup. I cycled through a dozen innocent explanations, each one sounding more desperate than the last. I finally turned off the engine. I walked up the 3 flights of stairs, my key in my hand. I put it in the lock as quietly as I could. I don't know why. It just felt necessary. The apartment was quiet, but not empty quiet. It was occupied quiet. I stood in the living room, my work bag still on my shoulder. And then I heard it. Laughter. From our bedroom. Michelle's laugh, but it wasn't her normal laugh. This was intimate, low, the kind of laugh that's meant for one specific person. I froze. My brain was screaming, trying to build one last wall to protect me. She's on the phone. Sean's not even in there. I'm being paranoid. I'm crazy. But I knew. God, I knew. I crossed the living room. I didn't knock. It was my bedroom. I just turned the handle and pushed the door open. They were in my bed, tangled in the gray sheets I had washed 3 days earlier. When they saw me, the first look on Michelle's face wasn't shame. It wasn't guilt. It was annoyance. Like I was the one interrupting something. Like I was the one who was out of line. Sean scrambled out of bed, pulling on his jeans with a practiced efficiency that told me this wasn't the first time. This wasn't a mistake. This was a routine. He looked at me, and it was worse than guilt. It was impatience, mixed with relief, like he was finally glad the charade was over. "Jane," he said, in that calm, reasonable voice he always used when I was being emotional. "Jane, this isn't what it looks like." The absurdity of it almost made me laugh. It was exactly what it looked like. He was standing there, half naked, next to my half-naked best friend in our bed, and telling me not to believe my own eyes. Michelle sat up, holding the sheet to her chest with a modesty that was so insulting it made my head spin. And she had the nerve to look at me with pity. "We didn't want you to find out this way, honey," she said. Honey. But honestly, Jane, this has been coming for a long time. You had to know things weren't working between you two. The presumption, the gaslighting, not just that she was sleeping with my husband, but that I should have known, that it was my fault for being too stupid to see it. I asked the one question you're never supposed to ask. My voice sounded strange, too calm. "How long?" Sean answered, emotionless, like he was discussing a business deal. "Does it matter? Long enough." Long enough. How long had he been pretending to love me? How long had every "I love you" been a lie? And how long had Michelle been sitting on my couch every Thursday drinking my wine, listening to me cry about my marriage, all while she was sleeping with my husband? I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I just turned around. I walked to the hall closet, pulled out my duffel bag, and started throwing clothes into it. My laptop, chargers, toiletries, the practical things. Sean followed me, still shirtless, still trying to talk about this like adults. I didn't say another word. I walked out of my apartment, got in my car, drove to a gas station parking lot 3 miles away, and I sat there and cried until I couldn't breathe. I didn't know it then, but my life, the one I knew, was over. And you know what's sick? Some people watching this story right now, they still won't subscribe. They'll watch this whole thing, soak up all the pain and the drama, and then just click away. Maybe you're one of them. Maybe you think I deserved it somehow, that I was naive, that I should have known. If that's you, I dare you. Go to the comments and explain why. Tell all of us why a woman deserves to be betrayed like this, for everyone else, for every single person who knows what this kind of pain feels like or who prays they never do. Hit that subscribe button. Prove you're not one of them. Don't let this story and stories like it get buried. That was 6 months ago. The collapse was immediate. I was living on my cousin Emma's couch. I was still trying to go to work, pretending everything was fine. 5 days later, I got the call from George Denzel. "Jane, can you come to my office first thing Monday?" His voice had that careful HR department tone. I showed up at 8:15 a.m. "Samantha," he said, not meeting my eyes, "we're restructuring the marketing department. Unfortunately, your position is being eliminated." Restructuring. Eliminated. The corporate buzzwords for "you're fired." "Budget constraints?" I said, my voice hollow. "We just signed 3 new clients." "These decisions are final, Jane. I'm sorry." I packed my desk in 20 minutes. Nobody made eye contact. By 9 a.m., I was standing in the parking garage with a cardboard box of my stuff. It was only much later that I found out George Denzel and Sean had been frat brothers back at UT. My job had never been secure. It was just another part of the lie, conditional on me remaining useful. 2 weeks later, the divorce proceedings started. Sean hired a shark, a high-powered attorney from a glass tower downtown. I had a court-appointed lawyer who looked like he was 3 days from retirement and had already given up. Sean's attorney filed motions painting me as unstable. She used my job loss as proof I couldn't function. She used my transient living situation, my cousin's couch, as evidence I was a mess. The judge, a man named Arthur Vance, approved every single motion they filed. He denied every single one from my lawyer. Sean kept the apartment. He kept the car. He kept the savings account we'd built together. The settlement left me with my clothes, my laptop, and almost nothing else. But the worst part, the absolute worst part, was when Michelle took the stand. As a character witness, against me. She wore a navy blue suit, a suit I'd helped her pick out. "It makes you look powerful," I'd told her. She sat there, hands folded, and she lied. She told Judge Vance that I'd been unstable for months, that I'd made concerning comments, that I was paranoid, that Sean had only stayed in the marriage out of obligation and fear. Every word was a lie, but she delivered them with such conviction. Her voice even broke at the right moments. A perfect performance. When my tired lawyer tried to ask her about her relationship with Sean, the shark objected. Judge Vance sustained it. Immediately. I sat there and watched my best friend of over a decade systematically destroy what was left of my life. And I knew this was coordinated. The affair, the job loss, the divorce. It was all planned. After the divorce, I started couch surfing. Emma's husband started making pointed comments. "She can't stay here forever, Em. You're not helping her." My friends were also sympathetic, until sympathy became inconvenient. "You can stay for a week," which turned into 3 days before they remembered family was visiting. "My couch is yours." Until their roommate complained, "Everyone's thoughts and prayers run out when you actually need a place to sleep." When I finally scraped together $200 from some freelance writing gigs, I checked into the Crossroads Motel, that weekly rate flea bag off the highway. It felt less like rock bottom and more like finally finding ground that wouldn't shift. At least the motel wasn't pretending to care. Room 14. That was my new home. That was where I was, 3 weeks later, when I dropped my phone charger and found that suitcase. I sat on that filthy carpet all night. $70,000, a ticket to Portland, Oregon. And that note. "Don't trust Sean. Don't trust Michelle. They've been planning this since before your wedding. Your mother's death wasn't an accident." My mother, Eleanor, she died 6 years ago. The rainy night, the tree, the police report that said she fell asleep. Aunt Queenie had insisted something was wrong. She'd pulled me aside at the funeral. Your mother was investigating something, Janie, at the pharmaceutical company where she worked. Her death was too convenient. I'd dismissed her. We all had. Grief makes people paranoid, we said. We all learned to just nod and change the subject when Queenie started in on her conspiracies. Now, sitting in a motel room I paid for with crumpled ones and fives, I was holding a note that said my crazy aunt had been right all along. Helen had given me a choice. Take the $70,000 and disappear. Start a new life. Lord knows I'd earned it. Or use it to fight back. By morning, I had my answer. I was done running. I was done being the person things happened to. I packed my duffel bag. I put the $70,000 in a waterproof bag at the bottom. I checked out. The woman at the front desk just nodded. Good luck, she said, not meaning it. The flight to Portland left from Austin Bergstrom on a Thursday. I flew Spirit. Of course I did. I was wedged in a middle seat between a businessman who smelled like stale coffee and a kid blasting TikToks on his phone with no headphones. I didn't sleep. My mind was racing. What had my mother found? How deep did this go? Had any part of my relationship with Sean been real? Or was I just a target? A job? Portland greeted me with a cold, gray sky and a steady rain that felt different from Texas rain. It felt like it seeped right into your bones. I rented a cheap Chevy Spark and drove to the address on Helen's note. It led me out of the city to Lake Oswego. This was where the real money lived. Quiet streets, huge trees, houses set so far back from the road you couldn't even see them. Queenie's house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac. It was a small, 70s-era ranch. The windows were dark. The lawn was a jungle of weeds. It screamed, "Someone died here and nobody's dealt with it yet." I parked in the driveway. Was I really doing this? Chasing a conspiracy theory from my dead paranoid aunt? Yes, I was. Helen had left a key for the house in the suitcase. I let myself in. The air was stale, smelling like dust and old paper. The house was exactly as I'd expected. Books everywhere, stacks and stacks of them, filing cabinets in the living room instead of a couch, boxes, all labeled in Queenie's perfect script. But the note had pointed me to the shed out back. I walked through the overgrown yard. The shed was old, but the locks on the door were brand new, heavy-duty, industrial. Another key from the suitcase. It opened smoothly. Inside, the shed was immaculate, organized, more filing cabinets, all labeled by year, more boxes, indexed like a professional archive, and in the back corner, under a tarp, was a trap door set into the floor. I pulled back the tarp. I used the last key. It opened onto a ladder, descending into darkness. I turned on my phone's flashlight and climbed down. It wasn't a crawl space. It was a room. A small, concrete, climate-controlled evidence room. The air was cool and dry. LED strips flickered on, powered by a battery. Filing cabinets, boxes, a table with a laptop, and a cassette player. Helen, my crazy Aunt Queenie, had built a goddamn Batcave. I started with the photographs, spread out on the table. The first one I picked up made my hands shake so hard, I almost dropped it. It was my mother, Eleanor, standing between Sean and Michelle. All three of them were smiling, wearing name tags at some corporate conference. The banner in the background said, Meridian Pharmaceuticals Annual Research Summit. The date on the photo? 8 years ago. 8 years. 2 full years before I supposedly met Sean at that dinner party. 2 years before our easy courtship began. My brain tried to make excuses. It's a coincidence. They met once and forgot. It's not what it looks like. That phrase again. But I knew. This wasn't a coincidence. Sean hadn't met me by accident. He was positioned in my life. I had been a target. My entire marriage, my entire friendship. It was an operation. My marriage was a lie. My best friend was a spy. They murdered my mother. Are you paying attention? Because I'm about to tell you what was on those tapes and the world I knew ceased to exist. If a story this shocking, this twisted, doesn't make you need to see what happens next, then what are you even doing here? This is the point of no return. Hit that subscribe button right now. Or just admit to everyone in the comments that you don't care about justice. Go on. We'll wait. I set the photo down. My hands were numb. I looked at the stack of cassette tapes. Labeled. Dated. The first one. Sean Garrett, Darius Crow. March 2019. Discussion of Eleanor Vaughn. Investigation. My mother's name. I put the tape in. I pressed play. Static. And then, voices. The first voice was Sean's, my husband's voice. The voice that had told me he loved me 1,000 times. But this was a voice I'd never heard. Cold, businesslike. Eleanor's getting too close, Sean said. She's made copies of the trial data. She's been meeting with someone at the FDA. I don't know who. I'm trying to find out through Jane. A second voice. Older, more authoritative. Darius Crow. We can't let this go public. The approvals are worth billions. If she exposes the data manipulation, we're all looking at criminal charges. Can you contain her through the daughter? I've tried, Sean said. But Eleanor doesn't talk work with Jane. She thinks she's protecting her. It's making my job harder. Jane doesn't know anything useful. A pause. Then Crow's voice, colder than ice. Then we need to consider other options, more permanent solutions. We can't risk this entire enterprise because one goddamn accountant grew a conscience. I stopped the tape. I couldn't breathe. They were talking about killing my mother, planning it, like it was a business problem. And Sean, my Sean, he was part of it. He'd been using me to spy on my own mother, and when I wasn't useful, he just let them kill her. I forced myself to press play again. There are ways, Crow continued, to make it look accidental. We have people for this. Car accidents happen all the time, especially on rainy nights. Nobody questions them. What about afterward? Sean asked. Jane's going to be a wreck. She'll lean on me, which is good for access. But there's that aunt, Queenie. She's a paranoid nutjob and she's suspicious of everything. She's going to start asking questions. Crow laughed. A dry, horrible sound. Let her ask. Nobody takes Queenie Vaughn seriously. She's been crying wolf for decades. If she starts screaming conspiracy, people will just pat her on the head and call her crazy. We just need to make sure the investigation is handled by people we can trust. The recording went on for another 20 minutes. Logistics, contingencies, planning my mother's murder like it was a damn quarterly review. I found more tapes. Conversations between Michelle and her aunt, a senior researcher at Meridian. Michelle had been assigned to me. After my mother's death, her job was to manage me, to be my new best friend, to make sure I stayed isolated, to make sure I never started asking the same questions my mother did. Every Thursday night, every bottle of wine, every heart-to-heart. It was all surveillance. I don't know how long I sat there in that cold, dark room. Hours. My back ached. My eyes burned. Finally, I saw the laptop, a sticky note on the screen. Play this first. A video file on the desktop. For Jane. I opened it. Aunt Queenie's face filled the screen. She looked sick, thin, pale, her hands shaking. But her eyes were on fire. Jane, she said, her voice weak but steady. If you're watching this, I'm dead, and you found my archive, which means you're probably angry and confused, and wondering why I never just told you. She took a sip of water. The answer is, I tried. I tried to warn you about Sean at your engagement party. I told you something was wrong with him. You told me I was being paranoid, that I saw conspiracies everywhere. Her expression softened. I don't blame you. I'd spent your whole life being the crazy aunt. By the time I tried to warn you, you'd already learned to tune me out. Your mother, Eleanor, was my best friend, long before she was your mom. When she found out what Meridian was doing, falsifying trial data, pushing dangerous drugs to market, she came to me because she knew I'd believe her. She knew I'd help her document everything. We were building a case. We were going to go to the feds. And then she had her accident. Queenie coughed. A bad, wet cough. She covered her mouth with a tissue. When she pulled it away, there was blood on it. I've spent the last 6 years, she whispered, collecting every single thing you see around you. I did it because I loved your mother and because I love you. I couldn't let them get away with it. She leaned closer to the camera, her eyes burning into mine. You have 2 choices, Janie, the same 2 choices your mother had. 1, you can take the money I left you and you can disappear, change your name, move to another country, live safely. No one would blame you. You've lost enough. Or, she said, pausing for a ragged breath, you can fight. You can use what I've collected, and you can burn them all to the ground. Expose Meridian, expose Sean, expose Michelle. It won't be easy. They have billions. They have lawyers. They have judges in their pocket. They will try to destroy you. But Janie, if you fight, you might just win." She smiled, that crooked smile I remembered from when I was a kid. "Your mother would be proud of you no matter what, but I think we both know which choice lets you sleep at night." She reached to turn off the camera, then stopped. "Oh, one more thing. That $70,000 in the suitcase? I wasn't kidding. That's just travel money. The real fortune, your mother's and mine, is at the Pacific Crest Credit Union. Account number 7743. The password is your mother's old employee number. Use it to run or use it to fight, but for God's sake, use it." The screen went black. I sat there for a long time. Then I pulled out my phone and called the bank. After 45 minutes on hold, I was transferred to wealth management. A woman named Patricia asked me to verify my identity. I gave her my mom's employee number. There was a long silence. "Ma'am," Patricia said, her voice completely different, "your aunt established a trust in your name. It contains stock portfolios, real estate, and intellectual property rights your mother secured before her death. The total value is approximately $14 million. $14 million. Aunt Queenie hadn't just left me evidence. She'd left me an arsenal. I knew exactly what I had to do. Queenie gave me a choice, run or fight. I know what I chose. But what about you? When you're faced with injustice, are you a runner or are you a fighter? Fighters, subscribe. Fighters hit that notification bell because they need to know the truth. Fighters show up. Runners, well, runners just click away. They pretend they didn't see. They stay silent. If you're a runner, if this is all too much for you, go on down to the comments and tell us what you're so afraid of. For the fighters, let's go finish this. My next call was to the FBI, Portland Field Office. I used a name Aunt Queenie had left in her files, Agent Dina Jackson. She answered, "Jackson. My name is Jane Thompson. My aunt, Queenie Vaughn, left me some information about Meridian Pharmaceuticals. I think it's related to a case you were building." Silence on the line. Then, "Where are you, right now?" "Lake Oswego, at my aunt's house." "Do not move. Do not touch anything else. Do not talk to anyone. I'm 20 minutes out." She hung up. She made it in 15. Agent Jackson was all business, late 40s, hair in a tight bun, practical blazer, FBI badge on her belt. She looked at me, standing in the overgrown backyard, with total skepticism. "Show me." I led her to the shed, down the ladder. I watched her face as she took in the archive, the filing cabinets, the tapes, the labels. She put on gloves. She started pulling files. She read for 20 minutes, silent. Finally, she looked up at me. "Your aunt," she said, "was either the most brilliant investigator I've ever met, or she was completely insane. Probably both. Jane, this is enough. This is everything. This is enough to open a federal investigation into fraud, conspiracy, and, yes, murder." She looked around the small room at the culmination of my aunt's and my mother's work. "You just handed me a case that could take down a multi-billion-dollar corporation." The investigation was slow, painfully slow. Agent Jackson warned me it would be. "They're building a case against an army of lawyers, Jane. It has to be perfect. Subpoenas, warrants, bank records. They interviewed everyone. I used the 70th to rent a small one-bedroom apartment in Portland, an old building with creaky floors. I lived simply. I waited. I met with prosecutors. They asked me the same questions 100 times. Timelines, relationships, conversations I'd half forgotten from years ago. For months, I was in limbo, waiting for the machinery of justice to finally start turning. And then, one Wednesday morning in spring, it did. The dominoes started to fall. It began with the raids, federal agents, in those blue FBI windbreakers, swarming Meridian's gleaming glass headquarters. It was all over the national news. Darius Crowe, the CEO, the man who'd ordered my mother's death, was arrested at his mansion. They perp-walked him out in handcuffs, right past his shocked neighbors and the shouting reporters. Agent Jackson called me that afternoon. "We got him, Jane. We got Sean." He was arrested at his new tech bro startup. I watched the footage on the local news. He tried to look composed. But I saw it. The fear, the shock, the realization that he wasn't untouchable. Michelle was arrested 2 days later at a coffee shop in Seattle. She'd moved after the divorce. The news said she cried during her arrest. Performative, I thought. She didn't cry when she was lying about me in court. And then, Judge Arthur Vance. He abruptly resigned from the bench, releasing a statement about wanting to spend more time with his family. It didn't work. He was indicted 3 weeks later for accepting bribes. Queenie's files had it all: bank records, deeds to a vacation home bought by a shell corp that traced right back to Meridian. My divorce case was one of the first to be reviewed. Agent Jackson called me. Good news! The court is vacating the ruling. In fact, they're annulling the marriage entirely, declaring it invalid from the start due to fraud. It never legally existed. My marriage had been a lie, and now, in the eyes of the law, it had never even happened. The trials took over a year. Darius Crowe went first. It was a media circus. Whistleblowers testified. Patients who had been harmed by Meridian's drugs told their stories. Forensic accountants showed how Crowe had personally profited millions from data he knew was fake. The jury found him guilty on 17 counts. The sentence, 23 years in federal prison. He was 62. He would die there. Sean's trial was quieter, but for me, it was the only one that mattered. I sat in the back row every single day. I listened to those tapes again, heard his voice planning my mother's death, heard him call me not useful. His defense tried to paint him as a victim, a low-level guy manipulated by Crowe. But the bank records didn't lie. The payments, a check, every single month for 7 years, for services rendered. The service of pretending to be my husband. The jury found him guilty: conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, racketeering. The judge sentenced him to 15 years in federal prison. When the verdict was read, he looked at me, right at me, across the courtroom. His expression was pure rage, as if I had betrayed him. I just stared back. I didn't blink. Michelle took a plea deal. She rolled over on everyone else to save herself. She got 8 years. 6 months later, I got a letter from her, prison stationery. 3 pages of "I'm so sorry," and "I was young and desperate, and I really did grow to care about you." She wanted to know if, someday, I could forgive her. I read the letter once, then I used it as a coaster for my coffee. Some things can't be repaired. Forgiveness isn't something you owe the people who detonated your life just because they're sorry they got caught. The civil lawsuit against Meridian took 2 more years. They settled. They were forced to pay $2.7 billion to the families they'd harmed. My mother's estate received $12 million in wrongful death damages. I inherited it all, and I donated every single penny. I gave it to organizations that fight for pharmaceutical safety. I didn't need it. I had Queenie's $14 million. I used that money to start the Vaughn Thompson Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to funding the crazy ones, the whistleblowers, the paranoid ants who see the truth. We investigate corporate fraud. We protect the people who risk their careers to expose it. It's my full-time job now, turning my grief into a weapon. I still think about that motel room sometimes. Room 14, eating instant ramen with a plastic fork. I keep the receipt from my last week there. I keep it in my wallet. It's a reminder that rock bottom is real, that betrayal can strip you of everything you thought you were. But it can't destroy you, not unless you let it. My Aunt Queenie, the paranoid one, was the only one who saw the world for what it was. She knew that powerful people don't stop being corrupt just because you trust them. I rebuilt my life from the ashes of a fraudulent one. It's messy, it's complicated, but it's real. It's the kind of life my mother and my aunt would be proud of. I'm not the woman I was when I found that suitcase. I'm stronger, I'm more careful, but I'm also more certain of what matters. That woman in the motel didn't know how much she could survive. I'm grateful I'm not her anymore. I built a meaningful life from the ruins of a fraudulent one. This story is my proof. If this story of justice and resilience moved you at all, you know exactly what to do. Hitting that like button shows that you stand for the truth. Hitting that subscribe button proves you're not one of them. It proves you're a fighter. And if you've watched this entire story, all the way to the end, and you still can't be bothered to click a free button, I honestly feel sorry for you. Go on down to the comments and let us all know why you're so empty inside. We're all genuinely curious. For everyone else, thank you for listening. And don't miss the next story.